He leads us all the way, playing proper football, the Sheffield United way. Ale, 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 ale.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Chef United Way. And we are doing a live stream that we were going to do last night, but we didn't do it last night because chuffing Patrick Bamford gets linked with us. And then we're like, we're going to do it tonight. And then chuffing Patrick Bamford signs for us. As if Sheffield United do business that quick usually, especially when he's been training with Coventry City. But let's be honest, Coventry City are a little bit better than us this season, so they don't need to press the panic button, do they? Anyway, we're not going to be talking about Patrick Bamford tonight. Let us know in the comments what you think about Bamford, though, and we might have a little bit of a chat about him later on. But I'm going to bring Ollie in right now because tonight, Ollie, we're going to be doing player ratings for the season so far. Excited?
Yeah, looking forward to it. I think it's interesting. I think it's one of those where you get to an international break and it's quite nice to, well, actually, usually it's quite nice to look back. I'm not sure right now it's that nice to look back at United, but, you know, we have to enjoy ourselves. I always enjoy, and I'll let people in just a little behind the scenes here. Whenever our intro plays, I really enjoy watching Nick getting ready to sort of go and give his big speech while I deliberately try and put him off in the sort of behind the scenes bit of StreamYard, where I am just dancing like crazy, trying to make sure that I'm catching his eye, really trying to put him off. And I enjoy every single time. Just before the music ends, you see him go. And then he kicks off into it. And it's always a lot of fun. So if nothing else about this video I've enjoyed my dance so far. So, you know, I'm having a lovely time.
To be fair, mate, so do I. I dance along to it too. It's a great song. And especially now we've not got the sponsors at the front because, again, looking behind the scenes, we need to do a new sponsors video because we've obviously got the fantastic IPM joining us on board. But it's almost like we've had loads of time in between games to get something like that sorted, but we've done none of it. But we will do, and we will be back to that. But in the meantime, we're having the long intro, which is very exciting, and we both get to have a dance. Anyway, we've waffled on already too much because I said to Ollie the other day, right, this is the format of this video. We're going to be trying to keep it to an hour. That's 60 minutes talking about 22 players. This is going to be difficult. But first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the sort of rules of this game, if you like. It's definitely not a game, but players with fewer than 5 appearances, or 5 and less, I think. No, fewer than 5 appearances aren't getting a rating. So I'm going to run through them quickly. Adam Davis, 2 appearances. We won't talk about those. Ben Godfrey, 4 appearances. We won't talk about those. Sasnauskas, I haven't had to try and say his name for a while, so that was difficult. Jack Robinson, 4 appearances. Thank God we don't have to rate him. Jamie Shackleton, 3. Reece Davis, 1, and we all know it was that fateful first game of the season, playing centre-back with Bindon. Sam Curtis, 1. Tahith Chong, unfortunately, only 3. We would have loved to have seen him play more games. Ukaki, 1, and Louis Marsh, 1. I think some of those came in the cup game against Birmingham City. So let's get into this, because what else we're going to be doing is Ollie's going to be popping comments on the screen when you guys are rating these players. What we'll do is we'll wait until the end of talking about one specific player. Ollie will pop them on screen so that you guys get your say as well as us. So let's start with the man between the sticks, Michael Cooper. Now, he hasn't had the best start to a season, has he, Ollie? Compared to last season, anyway.
I think he's had, I think I realised I've been quite harsh on Cooper. I was going to say he's had as bad a start to the season as you would probably expect from a goalkeeper at this level. But then we saw Adam Davis for 45 minutes. So it's fair to say that he's not had the worst start to a season that any goalkeeper could ever have in terms of taking that forward. I have looked into some of the stats around Michael Cooper. Obviously, he's played just about every game for United. He's only missed 45 minutes, obviously, in the league. His current goals prevented rating, that is the expected goals based on the shots on target that he has faced, he is at minus 5.4. That is worse than the worst goalkeeper in the Championship from last season. It is almost double any other goalkeeper in the Championship from this season. And hilariously, because some teams have used more than one keeper, he is currently ranked 26th of the goalkeepers that have played in the Championship so far. Bear in mind, you would only ever expect there to really be 24 keepers on that list. That is a historically poor level of performance for Michael Cooper. He's had a really, really difficult start to the season, and I would be rating him at a 3, I think, because I think it has been really poor, particularly compared to the standards that he set himself last year. I really did expect a lot better from him than we've seen so far.
So here's how it's going to go. Me and Hal's done these sorts of videos in the past, and one of us are always slightly more positive. It's normally Hal being more positive than me, and I feel like I'm going to be the positive one in this one. And I've gone for a 0.5 rating higher than you. I've gone for a 3.5 for Michael Cooper, and I feel like that could be, something that keeps going on throughout this video, because 15 appearances, 16, 15 appearances. Yeah, sorry, that took a while. That took a while. I think we all saw in the last game that he was not exactly back to his best, but he certainly looked more composed. And I wonder whether, I said something, I think, in the match reaction, whether that's got anything to do with the fact that maybe the injury's more playing on his mind, and he's taking his mind off his form this season, because, against Coventry, he dropped everything. And luckily, we didn't concede a goal. But yeah, he's been bad this season. I think early on in the season, I was thinking that, he's not been bad. It's just that every shot that he's facing, he's practically a tap-in. But, he's got worse and worse as the season's gone on. And most of the players have got worse and worse as the season's gone on, because that's where the sort of form's dipped. But let's pop up on screen what other people are saying Michael Cooper is rated at. Yeah, Cooper's been better in the last few games, definitely, as I've just mentioned. 4 or a 5, a generous 5 if the injury rumours are true. Yeah, it's a possibility, but at least he's got that sort of international break before we, before we get into the Wednesday game. But let's move on into Femi Siriki now. He's not played too many games. He's played 9 this season, which is actually a lot more than I thought he had. So I don't think many of those will be starts. There was obviously the rumor that he's fallen out with Wilder, but he's back with a vengeance, and it was probably his best game, wasn't it, Al?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, Siriki is a really difficult one to judge because of how few games he's played. I know it says he's played 9, but a lot of those are appearances off the bench late in games. It's not like he started and then played 90 minutes in all of those games in terms of his performances. So I feel like we've not seen much of him. I feel like I'm rating him on bits and starts here and there. I think generally speaking, I want to see him now have a consistent run of games in the team. I think his performance against QPR, he got my man of the match in my match ratings that I did following the game. I really felt as though he gave us an impetus. He drove us forward. He gave us something that we have been missing so far this season. However, that makes it a really difficult one in terms of putting a number against it. In terms of what I expected in the summer, I expected him to probably be starting as our right back, given that we didn't sign anybody else to come in and play that position. So I thought we'd have seen more from him in terms of games. In terms of performances, his performance level has been probably about what I would expect from him. I think he's been decent, albeit we've not seen enough. So I'm going for a 5, predominantly because I don't think we've seen enough one way or the other to either rate him down or rate him up. And so I think a 5 is potentially a fair position to put him in. Where do you think?
I think you're right, and I've gone a bit crazy. I think the reason why I've rated him so high, I've rated him at a 6.5 here. I think the reason why I've rated him so high is because how can you rate someone down just for not playing? Like, I think in the last... Go on.
There's got to be a reason they've not played. I think that's part of the expectation, isn't it? When you come into the start of a season, you've got an expectation around somebody's game time and how they're going to play. If he hasn't played, he's not then shown enough to be able to get himself in the team to consistently lock down that position. And therefore, I actually think it probably is a mark against their performance so far, because there's got to be a reason they're not in the team.
You don't know that. You don't know that. You're not on the training pitch. You're not in the dressing room.
I'm not.
Femi Sariki might be the best player, and Wilder doesn't want to play him because he's too good. If anything, I think that could be the case. It's definitely not. But we'll move on to talking about. Oh no, we'll pop up the comments. Thank you, Ollie. Thank you for keeping me on it. Sariki had one. Sariki a hard one, barely played, but when he's been okay. 5 to 6. That's kind of in between me and you, sort of. 6 for Femi. See, other people are jumping on board my he's too good bandwagon. But let's move on to talking about Jaff now, because this is a strange one, because I think both of us thought that, you know, he'd be putting in 7s and 8s out of 10 every single week when we signed him. And it's been poor. I'm going to throw my rating out there. And I think I've been a little bit more positive than you're going to be. I've gone for a 5. I think his first game, have you? Right, okay, Ollie's gone for a 5 too. I think that his first game, he was absolutely fantastic against, I think it was Bury's first game, where he was throwing blocks in left, right, and centre. He's had some really good games, but he's had poor games too. So that's why I've gone for a middle of the road 5.
Yeah, I have been really generous, if I'm being honest with myself. I was having massive debates in my mind around how you should rate Tanganga's start to his career with United. I think compared to the expectations I had when he's come in, it's been quite disappointing and been quite poor. I think I did expect better than we've had from him so far this season. But I think there's a mitigating circumstance here. He has been playing at right back. He's been playing in a hybrid position where sometimes he's been expected to tuck in and be the left, to be the right centre back. Sometimes he's being expected to be an out and out right back. I've not fully understood where he's supposed to be playing, and I don't think he's understood where he's supposed to be playing either. I've gone for a 5 because I think when he's played at centre back, he has been good. We have looked like a better team, and he has looked like probably the best defender that we've got right now. I think he's proved that whenever he's been able to play in his natural position. I think, unfortunately, he spent way too much time playing in a different position where he has been poor. I think he's lucky to get a 5, but I think I am probably committing myself and sticking my flag to the 5 mast for now.
Fair enough. Now, while Ollie's putting the comments on screen, I'm just going to talk about my camera for a second, because recently it's just gone really, really foggy and blurry for absolutely no reason. And I spent a lot of money on this camera, so I hope it's not dying. So it will come back. I won't look like a ghost or, you know, a glowing angel for too long, I'm sure. But yeah, I think we need to move on to the central pairing, because, well, the central pairing what's been for the most part of this season, and that is McGuinness first and foremost. For McGuinness, 11 games. FotMob's rated him a lot higher than I thought he'd done this season. I've gone for a 4.5, Ollie, slightly lower than Tanganga. I think Tanganga's been poor. I think McGuinness has been worse. So what have you gone for?
I'm now worried that I'm crazy harsh. I've given him a 3. I think he's been really poor. I think in the games where United have really looked at our weakest, he's been one of our sort of really low-performing defenders. I think particularly that run of games we had where we, particularly against Derby, where we were just turned so quickly. He couldn't handle the pace, couldn't handle the power of the strikers coming up against him. Thought the same against Preston. You know, we had this run where we were conceding 3 goals game after game after game. There's a reason he came out of the team for QPR, and we kept a clean sheet. Don't get me wrong, I thought second half against QPR, he had a really good, improved performance. I shouted him out as being one of our better players on the day. I thought second half, he really did have a huge impact in terms of us being able to lock that down and keep the clean sheet. But up until now, I think he's really struggled. I think particularly long ball over the top, trying to sort of turn. He's not being fast enough. He's not being quick enough. I think whenever there's been a big physical striker against him, despite his size, he's been overpowered so quickly. I feel like he's lacking upper body strength to be able to counter those challenges coming in against him. I think that everything I thought he was going to be good at, I've not really seen come out yet. So it does feel really harsh. I do think hopefully that second half against QPR gives him a lot of confidence and means that he can come back into the team in a much more sort of a better vein of form. Maybe that can be what kicks him on and be a bit of a spurred him up moment. But yeah, it's a 3 for me because I've been really disappointed with what I've seen. And I think he's got a lot to answer for in terms of some of the defensive fragility that we've seen in recent weeks.
Wow. Well, the lowest mark that I've got on this. Actually, no, the joint Lewis mark I've got on this is coming up very soon in a defensive position as well. But it's not Mark McGuinness. 4 there for McGuinness. What else have we got? Clearance merchant is why FotMob likes him. I love that. I do think
there's a fair reflection as well when you think about those FotMob ratings. They're certainly trying to figure out how that works, and they have a lot of different rating systems. They have a much higher bar potentially than where I would naturally start at these kind of ratings. And so I do think sometimes they can be misleading in terms of reflecting how players have been through the season.
Yeah, like stat padding players, like central midfielders who just pass the ball a lot and get lots of successful passes. Yeah, I get that completely. Let's move on now to Mr. Ben Mee. And I was shaking my head when you were talking about Tanganga being the better of the central defenders, because actually I think Ben Mee has been a Rolls Royce this season. I think the only time we've seen Ben Mee being underperforming is when, his pace has been exploited. But that's Ben Mee. Like, he's at that age where he's losing a yard of pace, and he's coming into a team that have shipped in goals and played really, really badly. And actually, I think he's come out on top out of all of them. I've gone for a 6.5 for him. That's wild, isn't it? That's wild. I've got a bit high here, I feel. And the thing is, I did these ratings a few days ago when they were fresh in my mind, and now I'm thinking, why have we gone so high for certain players?
Legitimately, Nick, I'm looking down my list, and so far you've already got 2 players who I've only got 1 player higher than in my entire list. Like, there is very rarely any players close to this.
What was that?
The highest score I've given to anybody in our entire squad is a 7. I've given nothing higher than that. And so the fact that you've already got a 6, I think 2 6.5s potentially, is insane to me.
Yeah. It is what it is. However, let's pop some comments on screen, and let's have a look at Ben Mee, 6 for Island Nudge. 6 there. What have you going for?
I'm going for a 5. I've matched him up for a 5. I think you're right. I think he has been sort of an improvement. I think we've seen his leadership coming through on the pitch. I do think that there has been games where he's possibly got away with slightly underperformances because other players have been worse. I've thought about this a couple of times. I thought it at sort of Preston, thought it against Coventry. I think where other players had really struggled, he's kind of getting away a little bit where he's been caught out. But overall, I think he's been steady. I want to see him in our first choice back 4. I think him and Tanganga as a back 2 is our best central defensive partnership. And I think they should be spending much more time together to build that relationship and to be our starting defenders for the rest of the season. I think he is calmer and is certainly in a much better place than McGuinness and a lot of the other centre-backs that I'm sure we'll come to in a moment. But yeah, I still think that there's been issues there that potentially are just being sort of smoothed over a little bit, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to change this a little bit and pop the comments up while we're talking because, we are 20 minutes in and we are nowhere near on track. So I'll pop up on screen as you're talking. So let's move on to Tyler Bindon. Now, I'm going to throw mine out there. I've gone for a 3 for Tyler Bindon, and I'm almost certain that you've got him lower.
Yeah, I have. I've gone for a 2.5. I think he's, and I don't think it's all his fault. I'm not saying that it entirely rests on his shoulders. At the start of the season, if you look back to the back 4 that he was being asked to play as a part of, there's no, you would expect it to struggle. You would expect it to be difficult. I think for a lot of it, you would actually say that he was sent out to fail. The opening game of the season, he was expected to play in a back 4 with Reece Norrington-Davies as his central defensive partner. He's not going to look good when he's in that kind of situation. He then went out and, we've said we're not going to give him a rating, but he then went out for his next couple of appearances playing next to Jack Robinson. This was a Jack Robinson who was almost determined to get sent off at that point of his career with Sheffield United. He seemed like the only thing he ever wanted to do was fight a referee, which was always going to then bleed through. And Bindon, again, was in a really bad situation. However, when it comes to the fundamentals of what you'd expect to see from a centre-back, I don't think he displayed any of them during his performances. I often go back to that opening day against Bristol City. You know, we were playing quite well. We were 1-1. We were sort of just before half-time. United were well on top of the game, having just got the equaliser. There's a long ball over the top. Binden's got 10 yards on Reece Jacobson. He's the first player to get to the ball. It's really easy and comfortable for him to control that ball, either play it back to Cooper, knock it out of play. If we're being honest with ourselves, he should have had the opportunity to just bring it down and play out. Instead, what he does is he dallies, and Jacobson gets the ball in front of him, takes a touch, and suddenly we're losing 2-1. From there, the game ran away from United very quickly just after half-time. But all of that can be traced back to this one moment of hesitancy that you'd expect a centre-back to be able to deal with. We then saw similar moments happen throughout his appearances for United so far this season. I'm not writing him off, albeit that I'm pretty confident he's not going to play for us again and will then go back to Nottingham Forest in January. However, I think he has had a really, really poor start to the season. And there's an explanation for why, even in a team that's conceding 3 goals every week, he's not come yet into the first team. We've not seen him partnering Ben Mee or Tanganga because, frankly, I think Wilder's made an assessment that he's not good enough right now. And I think based on what we've seen on the pitch, that's probably fair.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I would like to see him again at the side of Ben Mee or Tanganga, just to give him a fair crack at the whip. But at the same time, when you're conceding 3 goals with those in the team, you then don't want to put a player in there that you deem is not as good as them. So I feel sorry for him, as Alessandro said there. But you know, he's clearly not at the level, is he? And I think we all looked at it and thought, this is a weird signing for a team that's trying to get promoted to the Premier League back in the day. I think he was our first signing as well. He came from nowhere. And like you say, I think he'll be back to Forest very, very soon. And actually, I think he'll play most of his career in League One or lower. Let's move on to a player that was absolutely fantastic last season and has really flattered to deceive this. Harrison Burrows. Ole, what has gone wrong for Burrows?
I couldn't even tell you, you know. I think that's one of the most baffling things about this season has been the drop-off from Harrison Burrows. Because last season, I really thought we saw a defender who got more confident in his defending abilities as the season went on. We knew when we signed him that he was going to have really strong attacking sort of statistics. We knew that he could beat a man. We knew that he could deliver a good cross into the box. We knew he'd be able to take a solid free kick. There were so many positives around his game. And then as the season went on, he got better and better at standing his winger up one-on-one, making sure that he wasn't getting beaten easily defensively. I thought he had an unbelievable season that really set him up to kick on and flourish this season. Instead, we've seen such a regression. I think he's had a really, really disappointing season so far. I think going forwards, we've not seen anything from him. I think his delivery on corners and set pieces has been really poor in terms of trying to create chances. Where the team in the division who's had the most corners, I'm sure Burrows will have taken a good portion of them, and very rarely will he have created a chance with any of those deliveries in. I think defensively, he's been a bit of a liability. Again, you can look at the players stood next to him. The games he's played with Reece Norrington-Davies, for example, stood next to him. Jack Robinson stood next to him. They don't help him. They don't make his job easier. However, I've been unbelievably disappointed with what we've seen, to the point of I don't think anybody would have for a second predicted that Burrows would lose his place in Sheffield United starting 11 this season, and we would have Sam McCallum as our first choice left back. And not just first choice left back, but everybody seems to agree. Nobody sat there going, I'd take McCallum out and put Burrows in. Everybody has recognised that based on what we've seen this season, McCallum's earned that shirt, and that's because Burrows had such a poor start and has been really disappointing. I've given him a 3. I think he's had a really, really poor start to the season. And that is partly based on expectation. It's a disappointment compared to what I expected from him. It's not the same 3 as McGuinness, because clearly it's slightly different in terms of how they've played. But yeah, I think he's been really poor. And I think he's deservedly lost his place in the team and has got a big job on to try and win it back.
Yeah, absolutely agree, mate. I've gone for a 4.5, something a bit higher than you. I think going to Blackburn and seeing how he changed the game has kind of sort of muddied the waters in my mind. And clearly, by looking at my camera, it's muddied my camera too. It's getting worse and worse, this camera. But at least the internet's holding out. That's one thing, Ollie, isn't it?
You've just jinxed us, almost certainly.
Yeah, damn it. I have my fingers crossed. I need to... No, I did give you 4.5, didn't I? But yeah, I think that coming on against Blackburn Rovers and really making a difference, getting us back into that game because we were losing and we were rubbish in that first half. And him, Brooks, Campbell, all coming on. It was the cavalry, as I said back then, coming on and saving us. And I think we all thought we were going to turn, our fortunes would turn. And I thought Burrows would come back into the side and get that confidence back. But he lost his place to the next man we're going to talk about, and that's Sam McCallum. And I've been really, really impressed with McCallum. I don't know whether McCallum has played above his level this season or whether he's just played to his level, but, he's not as good as Harrison Burrows. He's just not, technically. But when Harrison Burrows is playing rubbish, he seems to be at a level. And he seems to give the same sort of rating of performance every single week, and it's great to see. And quite often you say about players, oh, he needs to take his chance, or he missed taking his chance tonight. He's took his chance every single time he's had a chance to take that chance. I said chance a lot in that sentence, but I've gone for a big old 7, and I don't think that's crazy. I really don't, because I can't think of a time where I thought, you know what, in that defence that have leaked in so many goals, none of them are ever McCallum's fault. He's somehow grew arms and manages to launch the ball into the box, which we've never seen before. He jumps higher than anybody I've ever seen or heard of. And, he's even trying to get forward and score goals, which is good to see because, I really like him. He seems like a really nice lad. Everyone seems to like him. And, he deserves his shot in the team. My 7.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think he's had a fantastic season so far compared to expectations. Like I said in the sort of covering Burrows, nobody ever expected for a second that McCallum would be our first choice. I think his delivery off set pieces has been really impressive as well for me. And that's something that caught me by surprise. I didn't know he'd be able to do. He's had the long throw, which I think has been great. Obviously, he's got his goal against Coventry, which was obviously, a really nice moment. Unfortunately, we couldn't follow it through. But I've been really impressed with him. I think he's been one of the positive points for the season so far. I've given him a 6, which for me feels very generous, I'll be honest, in this season of seasons. So, 6 for McCallum. I think he's been a real standout of this sort of first portion that we've seen.
I don't think 6 is generous in the slightest. I think you're actually doing him a disservice there, because just because everybody else is playing rubbish don't mean that you can mark McCallum down. Come on, man.
I can mark everybody down for the team playing rubbish, Nick. I can promise you that.
Oh, we should have said that going into the next one, because I'm worried, because I'm sick to death of everyone giving Sidney Peck absolute pelters week in, week out. Ollie, you've only done it once. I think you've only done it. No, you've maybe done it a couple of times. But
I'd be shocked if I've only done it once for any player in the team, to be fair, Nick. I've given everyone pelters every opportunity I get.
Yeah, fair. But I've gone for a 6 for Sidney Peck. I think he's definitely above average. I don't think he's been good this season. Are you just going to pull a face every time I do a rating here?
I'm sorry, that blew my mind. Of all the numbers I thought you were ever going to say, I never for a second thought this was going to be a 6. My head's gone.
Well, you can't say that Bindon, feel sorry for Bindon because he's played next to rubbish players this season. Like Sidney Peck had big Vinny Souza next to him last season. Like he thought he got it made. Like all he had to do was pass the ball around and enjoy himself. This season, he got thrown under the bus by Ruben Sayers right at the start of the season because he were having to play defensive midfield with nobody else, and he's not a defensive midfielder. So, and I know you're going to say to me, "Oh, what is he then? He's not this. He's not this. He's not this." I understand that, but at the same time, I do feel like he holds onto the ball well. I feel like he is constantly asking for it. He's constantly trying to move us around. He doesn't just stand there and do nothing. So I think he drives us forward. I really does, especially in away games when we are penned back. I feel like he drives us forward and gets us, into more games. And I feel like he's really, really been. He's a young lad. It's his second full season. Well, not full. He's nowhere near full, but it's his second professional season. He's had a terrible start to the season with a manager that wasn't up to the job. Even these really, really experienced players are playing badly. And I actually don't think he's played badly this season. I think I think the back pass against Derby sticks in a lot of people's minds. And I don't think we should be just fixating on that, because I think he's been a better player than people giving him props for.
I disagree.
That's fine.
As I think you knew from the look on my face when the word 6 came out of your mouth. I've given him a 4, and I think that I'll be honest with you, Nick, I was very tempted to go lower, because for me, I've been really disappointed with what I've seen from Sidney Peck so far this season. I think everything last season felt fresh, felt as though he was always looking forward, felt like he wanted the ball in tight spaces to try and move us on. I feel this season's been safe. It's been backwards. It's been sideways. I think there are big moments like Derby, and I think he goes missing quite often. I think one of the key issues of our entire season so far has been the midfield gets bypassed so easily. We get run through straight through the centre of midfield. And I think that comes back to, it's not his fault that we haven't got any physicality next to him. It's not his fault that Vinny Souza isn't there. It's not his fault that we've lost so much in terms of what else we had around that central midfield position. But I think he needs a rest. I think he needs bringing out of the team. I think we need to look at other options. I'd certainly be looking at Davis and Samare as a potential partnership to see what they can do and what they can bring forward. Because, you alluded to it, but my key question is, I'm just not really sure what Sidney Peck's role is. I don't know what he's in the team to do. He's not there to score goals. He's not there to stop goals. He's not there to defend and win tackles. He's not there to drive us forward and beat 3 men to create a chance. We've seen him in the box, and as much as his movement in and around the box actually isn't bad, I don't think he'll ever score a goal because his finishing's really quite poor. I just think there's so many question marks for me about what he's actually bringing to the team right now. And I think we really should expect to see a little bit more from a central midfielder, because if you look at our midfield right now, it's just not functional. And it's a shame. I actually really like him. I want him to do really well. I was really impressed with last season as a breakthrough season. But right now, I think he needs taken out of the spotlight. And I think as a team, we cannot wait for Davis and Blaster to be fit to be able to give Sidney Peck a bit of a rest and let him sort of reset on expectations for the rest of this season.
I don't think we can keep comparing him to Arblaster, because I think we tend to do that because they are both young players who came through the academy. Arblaster had the luxury of going to Port Vale. I think there was one other as well before that. Sidney Peck didn't have that luxury, so he hasn't had. He's just been thrust into the limelight because he was good, and then he got put next to Vinny Souza, who's really good, and he's not had that time to gain that experience. And if the manager's not telling him what he wants from him, and he's just going out there and doing what he feels like he needs to do, he needs nurturing. And I think United fans this season have been really quite horrible about him this season. And for such a young lad who clearly is very, very passionate about football, very passionate about the club as well, and he's not a Sheffield United fan, he's not from Sheffield. I feel the fact that some people have been just nasty about him, he's just crazy. And I feel really passionate about that, because he is a young lad. And, having to leave your family and come into Sheffield, there's a lot of factors to this. And I think people just look at him at the side of Arblaster and it's like, well, not as good as him. And they both came through academy, so he should be. Go on.
I think that's fair. And I think certainly there's no reason to go after him on a personal note. It's about, how is his performance, and it's about making sure that it is reflective of, he's still developing, he's still learning. On that point, though, he has played more professional games of football than Ollie Arblaster has in his career. He's now, at this stage of his career, more experienced. Obviously, he's played, I think it's 65 games he's played now in terms of his appearances for United, generally at championship level. I understand that in the second season, you sometimes can see regression, and obviously your development's not always going to be linear. You're not just going to get better and better and better. You've got to look at the circumstances around it. And we haven't given him the opportunity to be his best self. They're all fair reflections. And I think it's really right to point out that, we shouldn't be going after players sort of in a nasty way. We shouldn't be going after them for anything other than, as footballers, we feel as though their performance isn't at the level it needs to be right now. But it just very much, for me, feels as though we're seeing a player who has played a lot of football, but right now doesn't really deserve his place in this Sheffield United team, because I don't think he's really showing us enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on from talking about Peck because we've talked about him for a while. And I doubt we're going to be talking about Jairo Riedewald for too long because he's not played too many games for us, as he's played 5 games just over the threshold. And I've given him a 4.5 because I didn't really know what to do with him
Agree.
because he's not played too much football. He's looked okay. But, if par's 5, I've gone for just slightly below.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I've gone exactly the same, 4.5. I found this probably the hardest player to rate in the entire team so far because I have no idea whether. I suppose a little bit he's got a similar criticism to what came through on Peck in that I'm not 100% certain what his role in the team is there to do. He's obviously more defensive. He's definitely more of a defensive midfielder who's trying to win the ball back, who's trying to break up play, which I think he does effectively for around 40 minutes whenever he plays. I think fitness has been a real issue for him. I think that's something that is really affecting his play at the moment. I think it means that he can't really kick on. I as well have question marks about his running power because I think he really struggles in terms of he never looks like a player who can properly run and commit to himself. I think physically there's a lot of questions that he's still got to answer about where he's at. But having said that, when he has played in our midfield, we have looked a better defensive unit. I'm thinking about that first half against Preston, thought he played quite well. And then he just looked knackered as soon as we came out for the second half and then got bypassed. And that's going to happen for a player who's not played loads of football in recent years. So for me, the big question mark over Riedewald is fitness. I think when he's been on the pitch for 30 to 40 minutes, he's looked a lot better than when he's been on the pitch for 40 to 60 minutes, because I just don't think he's got the legs on him right now to properly contribute for an extended period.
Yeah, agree. And I think that's maybe the reason why they only gave him a contract till January. We'll have to see what happens, whether we do put our hand in our pocket for someone, or bring someone in on loan who's at a higher level, or whether we just keep going with him. I don't know. But we'll move on to talk about Soumare now. And this lad is something completely different because I think we all have seen some really, really great moments from Soumare. And I'm trying to remember which game it was. I'm thinking it wasn't the Preston game. He had a really fantastic game against someone who was getting stuck in. It might have even been Blackburn away, because I remember him getting a fantastic standing ovation when he went off against Blackburn. It's always going to be a standing ovation away from home, isn't it? Because you stand up all game. But no, I think he's shown some real good glimpses, and I'm surprised that he's not got as much game time this season. But we can only really rate them on the eye test, really, and the games that they've played. He's played 9. I've given him a 6.
No. And that's fair. I've gone a little bit lower than you. I've gone for 5.5. I think, though, in terms of midfield, he's one I want to see a lot more of. I think actually, if you go and do sort of a deep dive into his stats look really good in terms of particularly his defensive recoveries, the fact that he's very, very rarely dribbled past. He's got some of the best defensive stats for a central midfielder in the division. He is comparable even at times to Vinny Sousa's stats from last season. That's the kind of level that some of his defensive actions have been at. It's a very small sample size. And so don't get me wrong, let's not get carried away. He isn't Vinny Sousa. He's never going to be that player. But I do think he's had a really effective start to his season. I want to see him more. I think he should be part of our first choice midfield right now. I think it should be him and Tom Davies if he's fit, because I feel as though they give us the best opportunity to both have a solid defensive unit that's capable of winning the ball. But I also like the fact that when he gets it, he's a powerful runner. He wants to try and beat his man and get forward. I agree with one of the comments that we've just seen, that sometimes his shooting can let us down a little bit in terms of what happens when he gets in and around the box. But I actually really like the fact that he attacks with purpose, tries to drive the team forward, and wants to really try and get on the ball in terms of moving it. So yeah, I like Soumare. I've gone 5.5, but that's because I'm not willing to rate anybody highly.
Oh God, here we go. Let's move on to another one now. I'm not even going to say the name. But this lad in front of us, I've gone for a 3.5, Ollie. I've actually, the best I've seen Alex Matos is when he's been brought on and kind of sort of been not pushed out onto the right, but he's been given the ball deep into games on the right-hand side, and he's looked to beat a man and put the ball in the box. Now, for me, that's just not his job. So when I've seen him in the midfield, I've been, really, I've thought he's been way under par, nowhere near as good as some of the other midfielders that we've got. And he's one that we've signed for money. And I just don't see him sticking around for too much longer because, yeah, he came from Chelsea, but, he doesn't look at the level of even, a lower end championship club. I know he was at Oxford last season, who were a lower end championship club, but even Oxford fans didn't really rate him. So I just don't know why we've signed this lad. I really don't. And, the podcast people out there that are listening aren't going to care. But look, I'm back. I don't have a glow anymore.
Hey,
You love to see it.
It's just shining through the darkness. We've got to that point of the video where we're talking about people who we're really starting to have difficulties with, and so you've just come roaring back. It's great to see. I've got a 2.5 for Matos, same as Bindon. I think it's been really poor. You talked there about, he seemed at his best when you've seen him coming on occasionally drifting out to the right. I assume you don't mean when he's come on and played right back, because my word. My word.
Area, not in a defensive sense.
Because I think, for me, I think he's just nothing like what we needed. I just don't think he's a player who's going to really suit what we want from him in a Sheffield United midfield. When he played right back, it was one of the most ridiculous sort of 30 minutes that I've ever seen from a footballer, from a professional footballer in particular. I think in terms of what he offers in the midfield, he's not big or physical enough to really play the role that we've been trying to get him into. I think you're right. He probably has been at his best when trying to get forwards, but even then he's not created anything. I don't remember him creating or having a chance. It's just that he's looked a little bit better in that he can control the ball and he's not kicked it immediately out for a throw in. So I've just been really underwhelmed. I think it's been a really, really poor start for him. And if he is going to make something of his Sheffield United career, he's got a long, long way to go in terms of improvements.
Absolutely. I feel like he was the one that, I think it was against Ipswich, where he tried to cut out the ball and knocked it to their left winger, who, scored the first goal, I believe it was.
Yeah.
It's the most unluckiest diversion I've ever seen. It was almost like the perfect pass.
I would say it's the second best pass a United players played all season, after the one that Sidney Peck played for Carlton Morris.
Yeah, that was definitely better. That was perfect. Let's move on now to Tom Davies. And it's always really difficult to rate Tom Davies because if he was fit for 46 games a season, I think we'd be all rating him extremely highly. And I'm still going to rate him as high as I possibly can, which I've gone for a 5.5. That's mostly because he's just injured all the time. He just is. He's looked really good when he's come on. And, I always look back at that Southampton game and I'm looking at the team sheet before the game and thinking, how's Tom Davies coming straight into this team when he's barely played any football? And then he had an absolute masterclass in midfield against two extremely good central midfielders for Southampton, who are two of the better ones in the league. And I'm just thinking, if only we had this player all season. He's just a fantastic footballer, and his brain is just on a whole new level, a whole different level to anybody else. But yeah, unfortunately, can't be marked any higher because he's just not played enough football.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I've gone for a 5 because I think fundamentally, if Tom Davies is fit for 46 games a season, Tom Davies is the best player that we have at Sheffield United Football Club, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind. I think he's a quality that we don't have anywhere else. I think in terms of his ability to take the ball, turn, beat his man, find a pass, intricate play around the edge of the box. There's nobody we've got in our team who can do that better than he can. It's just that he can only do it for 1 in every 3 games. And that's what's really disappointing. I think ultimately that's what's probably going to be his biggest disappointment throughout his career. And it's obviously really heartbreaking for him. You want to see him do well. You want to see him flourish. But yeah, you can't rate him any higher than, well, for me, a 5, because we just haven't seen enough of him. I want to see a full A fit, injury-free Tom Davies. I just don't think it's likely that we'll see that, which is hard, it's a shame.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking, as you say. Moving on to somebody else that's had their injury problems this season that we were hoping didn't. Gus Harmer, even before his injury issues, he was really underwhelming. And, we all, like you said, Tom Davies is our best player. And I tend to kind of agree, but also Gus Harmer is just, his delivery is normally impeccable, scores from free kicks, scores lots of goals, creates everything. He's a player that you look to create everything. But this season, yeah, like I said, he's just been really, really underwhelming. And actually, since he's been injured, Callum O'Hare is going to take my, player of the season so far. For Gustavo Harmer, I've actually gone for a 5, and that's crazy because I've gone 6 for Peck and 5 for Harmer. But the reason why I'm giving that is because I'm expecting this Gus Harmer, and we've got this Gus Harmer this season. You can't even see my hands. And he scored that fantastic goal in the cup, but I don't think he scored any of the goals this season, has he?
No.
And that's crazy to me. Like, if you'd have said to me, Gus Harmer will have played how many games? 10 games this season, and he'll have scored 0 goals in the league. First of all, I'd say we're going to struggle. But secondly, he's really, really underperformed. I'm not sure how many assists he's got this season, but, it's not many at all. And that's why I've given a 5, really. I probably should have given him slightly higher, but he's just been really underwhelming. And for me, he's the best player at the club. And, he's just not shown that this season.
Yeah, you make me feel so bad when you say things like, for me, it's a 5. I probably should have gone higher. And I'm sat here looking at a 4 on my screen thinking, are you sure you should have gone higher?
You looked at me like, you're talking crazy talk. I thought you were going to go like more than a 5.
No, a 4 for me. Look, 9 games that he's played in the league, no goals, 1 assist. From our best player, most creative player, somebody who's playing in attacking positions whenever he's playing, I think he's had a really disappointing season. I wonder if the injury was bothering him a long time before he actually went out and has missed a number of games. But I thought we just saw a completely different Gus Harmer to what we expected. I think he was really poor compared to what we would expect from him. And yeah, I think it says a lot that I think we've probably played better without him in the team than we did when he was playing. I think if you look at the results, they probably back that up. I think when he's been on the pitch, we've only won 1 game out of the 9. I know I'm not saying we've won loads since then, but I think we've won 2 out of 6 without him and 1 in 9 with him.
Lion.
That almost speaks for itself in terms of, points per game, in terms of what we're expecting from the club. I just think I expect so much more from Gustavo Harmer than we've seen this season. And hopefully when he gets back from this injury, he's fully fit and he's ready to go, because a fully fit and ready to go Gus Harmer, same as we said about Tom Davies, that makes Sheffield United a completely different proposition, because all of a sudden we've been spending all this time going, how are we ever going to score? How are we going to create any chances? Well, this is the answer to that question if he's fit and he's fully committed to playing.
Yeah, and there's lots of rumours going around that people think he's going to be fit for the Wednesday game. It is obviously, that'd be a huge plus if he was. But, people are also saying that Arblaster are going to be fit for the Wednesday game. And I'm sure Arblaster would love to be fit for the Wednesday game, but I can't imagine it. But, even Gus on the bench, I think that'd be a huge lift for everyone, because we all know how good he is. And I'm sure we'll get, at least a purple patch from Gus this season, because he's too good of a player to not give us that. And if you've got a purple patch from Gus, you're potentially staying up just on that, because he's that good a player. But one player that we've seen a fantastic purple patch from this season is Callum O'Hare. And I'll be honest, I never, ever, ever saw this coming. I did not see Callum O'Hare picking us up from his knees and driving us forward week after week, pitching that in there with goals, with assists when, the chips were down. He just never seemed that player to me. And I'm so happy and so impressed with him. And, he's really the only shining light of this poor season so far. Callum O'Hare has got 4 goals. I think it's 3 assists, around about that. I wish I'd have got my assists on here as well. But he's played every single game of football, which last season he didn't. He was actually, towards the back end of the season, on the bench week after week. So, he's obviously seen that and he's like, that's not going to happen again. And I think he played okay before O'Hare got injured, before Harmer got injured. And then since Harmer's been injured, he's really come to the front and, just really impressed with him. I've given him an 8, but only because, nobody else is going to get anywhere near that. And I feel like he deserves it.
Yeah, I've given him a 7. I think, I would probably say almost every game for since the last international break, I would say almost every game I've walked out and gone, yeah, Callum O'Hare's probably our man of the match. There's probably one or two where you'd pick out a different player, but the level of consistency that he's shown, I think, has been massive. I think when you look at the season as a whole, he scored the winning goal against Oxford, scored the winning goal against Watford, and I believe he got the assist for Harrison Burrows' goal, which put us ahead against Blackburn. So in terms of winners and actually contributing to the moments that have made Sheffield United get points that have been significant impacts on the pitch, he has played a key part in everything good that we've done so far this season. I think Harmer's injury has allowed him to feel a little bit freer. He's been able to play more centrally. He's coming deep to try and pick up the ball as often as possible. He always wants it into feet. I think I had probably a preconception that said to me, when the going gets tough and we're in a relegation battle and, it's finding it really difficult, he'll be somebody who runs away and hides. I thought he would be the kind of player who completely disappeared in this kind of scenario. Instead, he has absolutely accepted all the responsibility to be the main man. He's accepted the responsibility to say, okay, I will create, I will take us forward. I think the recent change of formation to playing two up front has sidelined him a little bit. I think he was much quieter against QPR and Coventry. I felt as though shifted out to the left, he wasn't given that same role in the team in terms of being able to be the creator. But when we've needed him, he's been the main man this season. There's no question that he's the man of the season so far. And I've given, 7 for me. And that's the highest rating anyone's going to get because I think O'Hare's been our best player.
Yeah, agreed. I think all those goals that he scored this season, the assists that he's got as well. But what also, when I'm watching him play football at the end of a game, I think against QPR, he bulldozed his way through their team. I think against Coventry, he was still our standout performer and really driving it at the opposition. And do you know what it was? I think it was the Preston game where we missed so many chances. Right at the end of the game, he forces that free kick right on the edge of the box that could, end up in the back of the net. It's little things like that you completely forget about. You just think about the goals and the assists, and fair enough, you do. But it's those moments where it's like the dying embers of the game. I'm going to pick this ball up. I'm going to run at them, and I'm going to beat that man to put us in the best position to try and score a goal and get something from this game. And, those are the moments where some people hide and some people don't. And Callum O'Hare certainly hasn't this season. I don't know what segue I'm going to do to get into this lad because Che Ogbene has really frustrated me. Yeah. Really, I was really excited to see him. And then I think the first few games I saw him, I was quietly impressed. More really only because he picks the ball up and he runs at a player. Yes, he runs at them, but he then doesn't really do much else with it. And we haven't had for many years, many players that pick the ball up on the wing and try and beat a man. And he runs at a man, but he doesn't tend to beat him. And when he does get, an inch, he puts a cross in and it's not good enough. And I think he's slowly got, worse and worse and worse this season for me. And I have gone for a 5. I'm going to go a 5. I've put 5.5 down here, but I don't think he deserves a 5.5. So I've gone for a 5. I think he's always kind of been around par. Sometimes he's slightly above par. Sometimes he's slightly below par. He's not a terrible footballer and he puts a lot of effort in. And he never stops running. Just that final ball is just not good enough for me.
Yeah, I've been a bit harsher. I've gone for a 3.5. I've been really disappointed with Ogbene. I've been really disappointed with him. I just think that, in terms of what we're looking at, I do wonder if there is an option on potentially looking for other options who could replace him in January, and therefore potentially looking at his loan as one where we could save the funds, get an extra loan spot back into the squad. I think in terms of his game, you're right. He looks like somebody who wants to run at his man. But what I see when I watch Chiedozie Ogbene trying to run at his man is somebody who used to be fast. And what I see is his intention is that you knock the ball past him and then you chase it. But what we actually see in practice is he knocks the ball past him, doesn't trust his body, doesn't trust himself to get up to full speed, and so never gets the ball on the other side. So he's just consistently losing it time and time again, which then means that over time he's lost his confidence. He now looks to play backwards more. He tries to cut inside and sort of find intricate passing. I just think we've seen a player regress over his time with the club. And I've been really disappointed to the point of, he's now lost his place in the team. I think that we've seen Andre Brooks come in and take that spot on the right side for the last couple of games. And I think Brooks has earned it. I think he's had more of an impact when he's been on the pitch. I think he's shown more in terms of his wanting to get on the ball, in terms of his partnerships with sort of his fullback, particularly with Sirike. I think it's a shame, but I just think this is a loan that hasn't worked for us. But as somebody said in the comments, he does seem like the nicest man you could ever hope to meet in your life. And I love the fact that he's lovely. I think he's a fantastic ambassador for the club. I think he's the kind of person you want representing your team, if only he could be a little bit better on the pitch, because we've really just not seen anything like the best of him. And to be honest, based on what we've seen, I don't envision he's ever going to get back to what he was pre-injury. And it's a shame to see, but, you know, football's a cruel business and you have to move on when it's not working. And I think he's a player for whom it's just not working.
Yeah, and I actually think, like Peck, he's also been given a lot of over-the-top stick from United fans recently, more recently, definitely. And I think it boils down to not being able to beat a man, and that's really his job. And that would have been a perfect segue into the next player, but I've changed them around because we were just talking about Andre Brooks. And actually, I feel like Andre Brooks has a good game 1 every 5, and that's not good enough for me. However, when he has that good game, he's way, way better than Ogbene on that right-hand side. But let's bring him up on screen, actually. That might be a good idea. But yeah, he's certainly come on in games and really made a difference, like you've said. But for me, he's still not anywhere near the player that I want him to be. I think that Andre Brooks could be whatever he wants to be, in my opinion. But, you know, he does feel a little bit lazy sometimes. I think he does work well with Sirike down that right-hand side. They've obviously come through the academy together, obviously friends. And, you know, when they play down that right-hand side, they probably absolutely love it. And I just want to see that partnership, you know, really kind of bloom. And for me, Sirike, you know, deserves his place. But I think Andre Brooks is only starting on the right-hand side because Ogbene has been so hit and miss, really, or just miss. So I've gone for a 5 for Brooks.
Agreed.
I could potentially up it to a 5.5, but Ogbene's just played a lot more games than, a lot more games recently than Andre Brooks.
Yeah, I've gone for a 5 for Andre Brooks. I think he's had a relatively fine season. I think he's been kind of what I expected from him at the start. I think the bit that frustrates me more than anything else with him is his lack of end product when it really matters. I think we see him get into fantastic positions and then really struggle to find that final ball. Maybe he takes an extra touch. Maybe he tries to play an extra intricate pass. Sometimes I want to see him just let loose a little bit. I think one of the key difficulties is he's on the right wing. He's left-footed. He's always cutting inside to try and sort of find a pass inside to try and find a play. He can't go around the outside and beat his man, which is always disappointing for me. But I think he's had a better season than Ogbene. I think we've looked better with Brooks on the pitch than we have with any of the other wingers who've played out there. I think, obviously, against Preston, one of our better first halves of the season, he was instrumental in that, in his partnership with O'Hare, the way that they were linking together. Obviously, he got the goal, which put us ahead. And so I think there are bright sparks there. I think his relationship with Sirike will be hopefully really important. So I want to see more of that down the wing. And yeah, I've just gone for a 5.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. That's fine. At least a couple of pity points for City, Nick. That's just not needed. Not needed at all. What did make me laugh is we might as well end the video right now because of this comment. All our players are crap. It's what happens when you don't level up as a Prem club. Let's just end it there. All our players are crap, Ollie. Let's just move on. Bye, guys.
That's enough for today. We've made it an hour as well. We've nailed that.
Yeah, exactly. No, we've got a few more. Let's run through Louis Barre next, going in January, I'm sure. I was really excited for him after a couple of the earlier pre-season games, but I think it just showed that he was playing at that level or slightly above that level. I think it was the Chesterfield game where he made 2 goals really early on, and I'm like, you know what? We've got something here. But when he's playing against championship players, he's not quick enough. He's not skillful enough. He doesn't move the ball quick enough to get a shot off. I'm sure he's got a fantastic shot, but I'm not sure we've even seen it this season. If we have, we've maybe seen 1 or 2. And I think the last game where Chris Wilder gave him a start and were like, prove yourself, he was really, really poor. And I think that's just, that's the end of him for me at Sheffield United.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't think you gave him a number, though, Nick.
My score's a 3.5.
So I've gone the same as I've gone for Bindon, the same as I've gone for the others who I think have had really disappointing seasons. I've gone for a 2.5 for Louis Barry. I think he's been really, really disappointing. No goals, no assists. Played sort of 450 minutes, so it's not like he's not had opportunities or been able to go forward. He offers nothing defensively, never chases his man, never tries to win a tackle. He just almost gives up when he loses the ball. He always loses the ball if you ever try and pass the ball into his feet because he's not strong enough to hold his man off behind him. He's not fast enough to knock it and run past his man. He's a little bit of a one-trick pony in that I know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to get the ball on the wing. He's going to try and knock it inside. He's going to try and smash it in the top corner with his right foot. Unfortunately, I know that, and every single defender that plays in the Championship knows that. It is the most easy thing in the world to defend against, and every Championship defender stands on the inside of him and goes, oh, look at that, you've knocked it inside and I've took it off you. Easy. Or they don't even let him have the chance to knock it inside because they just immediately put like half a finger on him and he falls to the ground and then they run off with the ball. I've been really, really disappointed. Obviously, he's going to be going back to Villa in January. I don't expect to see him again, really, in a United shirt unless he's coming off the bench. The one positive he has got is he can strike a dead ball pretty well. I thought his corners were quite good when he was the one taking them. I think he usually did manage to find Tanganga or somebody at the back post to knock it back across. But it's the only bright spark in what was really, really disappointing in terms of another player who I think needs to go back in January and we need to find a better replacement for.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the reason why he does come in on his right is because he's not quick enough to get round on his left and get a ball across, and not strong enough either, because if a defender is tracking him all the way, he's just going to lean into him and he's going to be on the floor. So let's move on to the strikers now. And number one striker, Tyrese Campbell. Last season, he was absolutely phenomenal for a lot of it. I don't think we expected him to be quite as good as what he was last season. And then I think we expected him to be a lot better than what he has been so far this season. I've gone for, I'd put a 5.5, but I think I've only sort of put his score up a little bit because of that fantastic goal against Southampton, and obviously his goal against Blackburn as well. I think he's got a few goals this season, but he's not been Tyrese Campbell. He's just not, and you know, he's usually chasing down every single ball. He's looking lethargic at times. Maybe he's got some sort of injury that he's carrying, but he's actually getting through games. He's getting through 90 minutes this season, which I am shocked at. But, you know, the 90 minutes is not as good as last season's 60 minutes.
Completely agree. I've gone for a 4. I think he's had a poor season, to be honest, by the standards that we're looking for. Yes, his goals and assists aren't that bad. I think it's 3 goals, 2 assists. Overall, you'd look at that and you'd go, it's not good, but it's decent. It's a goal or an assist every 5 games. But it's not what you want from your main man. It's not what you want from the person who's supposed to be sort of leading the line for a team who we're expecting to be towards the top end of the division. I think the bit that has disappointed me more than anything else is the work rate. Obviously, I wonder if he's playing within himself. He used to run himself silly for 60 minutes. Now he knows he's not got the fitness. So is giving half of that in terms of his overall effort, his overall work rate to try and get through 90. I can't explain it, but it's really, really starting to get on my nerves. If I'm being honest, there were a couple of games, I think it was Coventry, where we were penned into our own half for much of the start of the second half, and we were consistently looking for an outball. And I think there were 3 consecutive occasions within about 5 minutes of each other where we'd had the ball in our half for a minute, and when we kicked it forward, he was offside. And there was no reason to be offside. There was no excuse for being offside in that situation. It was laziness. He just could not be bothered to get himself back on side and therefore be able to play. He's not harrying defenders the way he used to. We saw, you know, what Danny Ings offered against QPR was all of that press to make defenders make mistakes, to try and force errors, to try and then lead us up the pitch. Campbell's not offering that at all. I think it's been a really, really disappointing season from him. I'd expect to see so much more than we have. And yeah, it feels like a real regression from where we were last year.
Yeah, it does. The only thing that I will say about that, you were saying about is him not scoring enough goals. But I'm looking at the forward positions, and for some reason, Ogbene and Louis Barry's in there too. But every single player on this list, other than Tyrese Campbell, has got 0 in the goals column. So, you know, as bad as he's been, some of his goals has helped us pick up points, and we've not scored many goals this season, I think. But I suppose the fact that Callum O'Hare scored 1 more goal than Tyrese Campbell's is just bad, isn't it? Really, yeah, it's bad.
I think as well, you know, generally speaking, it's wider than that. You know, his goals, when you think about them, The opening day against Bristol City was a really well taken finish. I thought that was, really positive to see. He then took a really nice goal against Southampton in what I thought was probably his best performance of the season so far. I thought he actually looked like he was interested in that point. And then obviously coming off the bench against Blackburn, when he hasn't scored, he hasn't done anything. And I think even in those games that we're picking out there, he didn't offer anything other than the goals. And if you get 10, 15 goals in a season, you go, yeah, okay, all he's done is goals, that's fine. If you're probably tracking to get 7, then that's just not enough. And you've got to be able to contribute more than that. I think it's also exacerbated by the fact that you look at the profile of strikers and you look at strikers elsewhere in the division and you think actually they're offering more than just goals. They actually hold the ball up, they link up into play, they make runs in behind the defender, they can beat a man and drive you up the field. At the moment, he doesn't do any of that. He's not helping us get forward. He's trying to get on the end of things in the box, and very rarely is even doing that.
Yeah, and talking about barren strikers as well, we've got 3 more to talk about. I think that Danny Ings has been the pick of the bunch for me. I think that he always, at times he's outpacing Tyrese Campbell, and that shouldn't be happening at his age. He does seem to put absolutely everything into every single run that he makes. I think it was the QPR game where he practically ran the length of the pitch to try and block. I think it was the goalkeeper just kicking the ball forward, and you just love to see it. And there's not many players. I'm not saying that he's ancient. I'm not saying that he's ready to pick up his pension, but there's not many players having done what he's done, dropped down into a lower league in the sort of twilight of his career that would be willing to do so much running for a team. And I love that from him. And I do feel like, I keep saying this, if he gets a chance, he'll score. He had that chance against QPR. I think he was a little bit on the stretch. I think that if it would have been a perfect position for him, he'd have headed that in the back of the net, no problem. And I do think he'll start picking up goals. Obviously, we've got another striker to add into this fray as well. Obviously, he's not played 5 games. He's not played 1 game yet. But, it's another one in the sort of Danny Ings ilk where he's past his best. And we're hoping to have a bit of a swan song. But for me, I've really liked Danny Ings this season, and I've given him a 5.5. It's a positive score. It's above par for me, and he's been a lot better than a couple of the other strikers that we've had this season.
Yeah, I found Ings a really, really difficult one to try and judge, if I'm being honest. Similar to some of the other players, I don't feel like I've seen really enough of him. I think I could be wrong on this. I think it's 2 starts. Other than that, it's majority sort of coming off the bench for 10, 15 minutes at the end of games. And I think that's just not really enough to give him a fair judgment. I feel as though he's run around a lot, but he's very rarely, created anything look like scoring a goal because we've not been able to create chances for him. I think there's been certain appearances where he's come on and probably not even touched the ball during his 15-minute cameo and then sort of moved on again. And so it's really difficult. I've gone straight down the bat with this one at 5 because I don't think there's enough there for me to say he's done well or done badly. I think we need to see more. I want to see more of him after that sort of performance against QPR. But yeah, I think he's run around a lot. But in terms of actually impacting games, quality on the ball, I just don't think we've seen enough for me to say that there's a positive or really that there's been a negative.
No, one thing I will say, I think I said it in the maybe match reaction or something. I think the QPR game, his touch looked slightly better. And I feel like that comes with game time, comes with training with the lads. And it did feel like it was sticking more when the ball came to him. I saw last few games it's like a trampoline on his foot at occasions. And it's nice to see him get back into, being able to hold the ball up a little bit more. But yeah, he's not played enough games. Or a minute, shall we say, not enough games, minutes. Because you look at this and it says total appearances 9 for Danny Ings, but it doesn't feel like we've seen even a full 90 minutes from him because he's just, even when he has played, I think it was the Blackburn game where he started, he didn't really offer a lot, but it seemed like that's because we were playing in a way where he was kind of, not the furthest striker forward. He was kind of playing not in a 10, but like a second striker role to Tom Cannon, which it's going to be hard to look good doing that. Anyway, let's move on to talking about the man, Tom Cannon. I've just jumped forward because we were segueing there. I don't really know what to say about him other than I've just given him a 4 out of 10 because he's just not done a lot this season.
Yeah, 3 for
Do you, know,
me.
do you know what he has done? He has what he's done is he tries to look like he's pressing, and he puts the least amount of effort in to press. And I think it's stat padding. I really do think it's stat padding. It's like I am pressing a man, but he's not. He's never actually looking like he's going to get there, and that's what infuriates me more. I'd rather him not even run at all and save his energy. Like if you're going to run for a ball and not look like you're ever going to try and block it, or like he's the complete opposite of Danny Ings when he's pressing. Like Danny Ings is like literally dying to block that ball or nick that ball off someone, and he just looks so lethargic and not bothered. And even when he does have the ball, there's no link-up play there. There's when he gets in front of goal or when he gets a ball anywhere near the box, you've just got no hope whatsoever in the fact of him actually scoring a goal. The goal against Burnley last season was actually a fantastic goal, and I thought he might kick on a little bit, but I just don't see how we paid even 5 million for him. Never mind 10. I don't know if it ended up being 10 million, but right now he's not worth $1 million.
No, and exactly that. I've given him a joint lowest for everybody else for the season. I've gone 2.5. It's as low as I've gone for anyone. Arguably, for some of them, it's generous, but we'll pretend not. He's a striker who's never ever going to score a goal. Ultimately, that's the facts of the matter. He's a striker who looks completely lost in terms of trying to get the ball. There have been games.
I don't want to cut you off, but what I want to ask is, him and Brewster, people are putting them in the same bracket of waste of money. But you look at Brewster, and at least he put effort in, and at least he looked like he wanted to be there, and he was the most expensive cheerleader ever. But I just don't feel like Tom Cannon offers anything. Carry on.
No, you're right, and they are. It's an interesting comparison, I think, because ultimately, Brewster cost us more money and walked out the door for nothing and gave us one really nice memory. And so, some people will say that means that you should, remember him better than he ever was. I think if you looked at them 12 months into their Sheffield United career, so with Ryan Brewster, he'd just signed for the club. He'd not scored a goal at this point. We'd just been relegated from the Premier League. He never looked like being a player at that stage who you would ever hang your hat on. But he had something about him. You thought he could potentially kick on. You thought there was a chance. I always felt, even today, I would still say it if you ask me, I still feel as though if he gets one, he might go on a run. If he gets one, you could see it how he could in a season get 15. You know what I mean? There's something there where you go, yes, it's not working right now. The confidence is low, but you can see what he'll do. Cannon, I cannot imagine any scenario in which he scores goals. I can't see a way that he ever consistently puts the ball in the net, because I don't see how his movement gets him into the right position. I don't see how he has any interest in being in the right position in terms of his want to run around and be involved. His press is practically non-existent, as you've covered. When he has the ball at his feet, he seems more likely to just donkey touch it out of play rather than actually control it and look like he's going towards goal. Last season, we saw him get through on goal a couple of times. And for somebody who I think has been sold to us as an elite finisher who will take the chances that come his way, I think whenever we saw him in front of goal last year, he never really looked like he was ever going to take a chance. I think it's a very much cut your losses if you get the opportunity to. If Preston want to come back in for him in January, the rumours were there on deadline day. I think Cannon's one that you shift as soon as you can for any money anybody will give you, because I just don't see how he's ever going to kick on. I've wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I've wanted to try and say, yes, it'll click, it'll work, but it won't. He's shown no interest, no sign that he'll ever make it work or that he even really wants to, at which point I don't know why we'd keep considering it as an option. Wilder clearly has had enough. I thought he had his best 45 minutes in the United shirt against Coventry. I thought it was the most effective he'd looked. I thought that 2 with him and Campbell at least looked like it might offer something. I thought that was signs of improvement. But the fact that Wilder's then obviously not used him at all against QPR maybe sends a message as to Wilder's perspective on that and maybe how he's followed it up in training.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hung the hat on him having a good game against Coventry. And I looked at it and I thought he'd done a little bit more running. He was involved a little bit more. But the reason for that is he's playing up front in a 2. He's going to have more of the ball when he's playing up front in a 2. but he still didn't offer anywhere near enough for me. And you know, he's just, I think he just needs to, well, like you say, we need to move him on as quickly as possible. And there will be a club that will think they'll get a tune out of him because he scored those goals for Stoke. And that'll be it. That's kind of like what we did with Brewster. Like he scored, you know, a few goals in half a season against for Swansea. And then, you know, we took a chance on him. And teams will keep taking a chance on Tom Cannon season after season. I'm sure of it, because they'll think they'll be able to get him back to what he was in that season, even though he scored 4 goals in one game, mate. He scored 4 goals in one game. How? Anyway, let's not talk about that.
Penalties, mate. I think penalties were massively helpful in that scenario.
Yeah. Let's move on to Ryan One and talk about the young lad, because he's not at the level, is he? And let's be frank, if we had 3-4 strikers that were contributing week in, week out, he would be out on loan and he would be doing really well somewhere else. I'm surprised that he hasn't been given a fair crack of the whip, because he looked really good in pre-season. I don't think he looked fantastic under Sayers, but nobody did. So I'm surprised he hasn't been given a little bit more of a chance. However, I don't think he would be anywhere near the level that we need him to be at to score goals in the Championship. I've given him a 4.5, but that's mostly because I've not really seen much of him this season. 7 games, apparently. I don't believe he started one, unless it was really early on for Ruben Sayers. Yeah, I hope it comes good. I think he's got everything to be a good player, and he has all that potential. He's a specimen, isn't he? Let's be honest. He's a huge lad, very strong. He just needs to figure out what sort of striker or winger he wants to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found him almost impossible to rate, to be honest, because you know, we're talking about somebody who's played so few minutes. You know, it's 5 or however many games it is that he's played, but he's probably come on for 10 minutes here and there. Yeah, from a quick look at his stats, he's come off the bench in 6 games and played a total of 120 minutes. You know, it's been really difficult to try and find any kind of sort of thing to hook his performances onto. Ultimately, I think he looks what he is. He looks like a very, very young man trying to break into men's football, who needs consistency and probably needs a long run of consistent game time to get himself up to the level. He needs a loan and should be playing in maybe League 2, maybe League 1, in terms of getting an opportunity to just play week in, week out for a team with less expectation, with less weight on his shoulders than we'd have to put on him right now. Ultimately, what that means for his rating, I mean, I'd probably say a 4, in that he's come off the bench and not showed loads in terms of creativity or chance creation, but that could be harsh. A 5 would also be fair, because there's no reason to mark him down. I'm doing it purely because effectively he's not scored a goal, which isn't entirely his fault. Yeah, he's a really difficult one for me, but ultimately he needs a loan. We need somebody in who can be our big target man, so that Ryan One can go out on loan and have a little bit of freedom to develop his career.
Yeah, again, it's probably similar in the Peck mold, where like we're only keeping him around because we've not got a player that should be at that sort of top end Championship level, and yeah, unfortunately, Ryan One's suffered in that way. I think, like Will Asula, he should have been sent out on loan. I don't think Will Asula had the loan spells he should have had either. No. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame that he's not been sent out on loan yet. But hopefully, now we've got, you know, well, I don't know if we have 4 strikers, because I don't know whether Tom Cannon's going to be out in January, or we might even replace him. Who knows? But I feel like he is going to be 5th choice. He's practically being kind of like the last choice all season. So yeah, hopefully he gets that loan, and yeah, we get some goals out of him this season, whether that be in a Sheffield United shirt or a different shirt. But thank you very much, Ollie. I really appreciate you joining me this evening.
Yes, absolutely. No, I've really enjoyed it. We're only 20 minutes overran, which isn't bad for us. You know, for the amount we can waffle, we've done quite well to only be 20 minutes delayed.
Yeah, I think 22 players in an hour is difficult. I think we'd have had to literally done 1 sentence per player. We might have just about got through it in an hour.
Yeah, it was asking a lot. So, you know, realistically, we've come out here. It's shorter than a full game of football. I suppose that's a bit of a win. We'll call it there.
Yeah, exactly. We're not those YouTubers that, stay on for no reason and just waffle and waffle and waffle, are we? We try not to. We try to be as precise as possible. And as I'm saying this, I'm waffling on more. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Thanks for joining us live. And yeah, if you're watching this after the live, make sure you write all these players' names down, put a number next to them, and comment it. Press that post button, and we would really, really appreciate it. Again, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Wally. And yeah, we'll catch up with you again soon for lots and lots of Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United content. Bye-bye.
Ollie, ollie, ollie.